FindLaw is the internet's top destination for free legal information for consumers and small businesses. Their nationwide attorney directory makes it easy to find the right attorney near you for your situation. FindLaw's legal forms and services allow you to create an estate plan affordably and from the comfort of your home. I think it's fantastic how easy it is to use. The resources are tremendous. One of the things you might want to check out is the Don't Judge Me podcast, the show about the law in real life. FindLaw's Don't Judge Me has a lot of opinions, jokes, insightful guests, and in-depth discussions about hot topics in the law. What they don't have is a lot of pretension or corporate oversight, those things you might be uncomfortable with when it comes to legal topics. The hosts are lawyers and writers at FindLaw, the primary online destination for all things legal. They hope you have as much fun listening as they have making it. You can listen now on Apple Podcasts. To get free legal resources anywhere you are, head to findlaw.com today. That's FindLaw.com. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Brian McComak about his upcoming book, Humanity in the Workplace, a blueprint for building an inclusive and equitable company culture. Brian McComak, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you so much, John. I'm delighted to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. Where are you joining us from today?
Today, I'm joining from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which has actually been consistent for a little while because I was one of the nomads during the pandemic. So it's nice to have like a place to call home again.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Having a home is wonderful, though I also am jealous of the nomad life. I kind of had this desire to buy a Sprinter van and just roam the country and stay wherever I happen to be. But anyways, that's another topic for another day. Wonderful to be with you. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk about DEI stuff, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how to create a human-centered workplace. Of course, that's what your book is all about. And that's what we'll be unpacking and discussing together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Brian's bio with everybody. Brian McComak is a diversity and inclusion consultant, speaker, author, and facilitator with over 20 years of experience in D&I, HR, company culture, change management, internal communications, and employee experience. He is the founder and CEO of Hummingbird Humanity, a consulting firm that cultivates and champions inclusive workplace cultures and human-centered leadership. He is also the author of Humanity in the Workplace, a blueprint for building an inclusive and equitable company culture, which was released in 2022. Again, a pleasure to be with you. Anything else you would like to share with me or my listeners by way of your background before we launch in?
Sure. The first thing we need to give you an updated bio on the release date. So it will be released actually in Q1 of 2023. It was the original plan was to release it this year, and I realized I wanted to do a little bit more work on the manuscript. So it'll be out in Q1 of 2023. So stay tuned for more, for updates on that for all of you listening, and we'll talk more about later how you can follow those updates and buy the book in a few months.
I know writing a book is a big process, and getting it to completion and actually getting it out there, it's a big step. So I get it, and I get taking your time and making sure you have everything just the way you want it. So that's fantastic. And again, it's a great topic. So I'll be anxiously awaiting the release of this book.
You know what? I want to embody the human-centered leadership philosophy, because I gave such a good answer there of like, I wanted to do a little bit more work on the book, which is true. From the side of vulnerability, which I think is, something that is so important for leaders today. One of the things I learned is I have sort of pushed back on the release date because I'm a little nervous about people reading my book. I'm excited to bring it to life, and certainly am really proud of the message, and I hope it makes an impact. And I've had to find that bravery and letting others read that, the book, the manuscript, which will become a book, and the stories that I have to share there. So, and I love that that's, the conversation we're having today is about how do we bring those conversations to the workplace? Because I went to my corporate training there for a second, which is we're going to make this sound like there was a plan behind it. And the plan was Brian was a little scared.
Thank you. Thank you for that honesty. And I think anyone who writes or produces anything creative and sends it out into the world for consumption understands that feeling. Like you never quite know how things are going to be received, and you're always vulnerable when you do that. So thank you for sharing that, and it's a good model for anyone listening. It's okay to lean into our concerns, and we all have things we're scared of, and that's fine. That's part of the human condition. We learn to navigate that. And ultimately, you take that step into the darkness, and you have courage and bravery, and you get that book out into the world. And I'm sure it'll be well received, and it'll be a fantastic contribution. So, thank you, Brian. All right, so let's talk about some of the paradigms that you're exploring in your book, that you talk about in your consulting work around workplace diversity, and what you think might be hindering progress in that space.
As with any puzzle or challenge like this, we can tackle it from a few different lenses. So I'll start with one lens around the messages that we all received in corporate life of what we should and shouldn't bring with us. And so we just talked about one of those messages, and the way that I like to frame it is, my first career was in movie theater operations. So I worked in a field operations environment, which doesn't tend to have the same rules as corporate life. And so I got to be a real human there. And my best friends, I worked with them, and we were real humans together. The first day I walked into a corporate office, nobody told me that I should what I say is take off my coat of emotions, but I knew I was supposed to. My friend Anne says she calls it having to take off your human suit. So you sort of take off the human suit and become this robot that has to fill all these boxes and expectations and do all these things. And that isn't helpful. Like the reality is we are humans, and we do bring our emotions with us and our lived experiences with us. And what we also know is that lived experiences are and there's systemic oppression that impacts people based on their lived experience. And we need to understand those experiences. So if we pretend all that humanity is outside of the four walls, then we've missed the point of how we can make our organizations thrive. Because what I do believe is, as well, is if you ask any leader, what's the most critical component of your organization or part of your organization, it's the people that work there. So how do you help them really have an environment where they can do their best work and be their best selves? So so there's that one perspective, and there's certainly lots of lenses around the impacts on the people there, and in the cultures that we've had in organizations in the past. And so I offer some ways to sort of rethink the cultural aspects of organizations and focus on the heart and soul. So that's sort of one bucket. Another one that I'll highlight, and then we can see if there's others you'd like to explore, is I think I'll continue with the heart and soul message there. So I talked about it from an individual perspective and how it's affecting us individually. Well, organizations, what I believe, we need to find ways to engage our heart and soul from an organizational design perspective, and a focus on what are the strategic imperatives and the initiatives and the energy behind that. And I think what's happened over the last 20 years, 25 years is HR as a function has really become a human capital function, and is focused on driving business impact, which is great. I'm all for that. I was an HR person for many years, and I love the evolution of HR as driving business impact. What I think we lost in that equation is some of the humanity and the heart and soul that HR professionals were caretaking around. And not to say that that doesn't still happen in some workplaces around the globe. And I want to give credit to all of the HR people who do the important and challenging work they do every day. But I think that we have an opportunity to reimagine the role of HR and potentially a new role or function that focuses on the heart and soul or purpose, which would include DEI and well-being and philanthropy and volunteerism or social impact, which is how we call that. So I think there's some organizational things, and then there's some cultural things and that's what the book's all about.
Hear that? That's your sign to this year. Finally, forget about those run-of-the-mill resolutions and instead start your own New Year's revolution. It's the sound to start selling on Shopify. Shopify is the e-commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're selling succulents or stilettos, Shopify simplifies selling online and in person so you can focus on successfully growing your business. Shopify covers every sales channel from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform. It even lets you sell across social media marketplaces like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. It's packed with industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth. Shopify gives you complete control over your business and your brand without having to learn any new skills in design or code. And thanks to 24/7 help and extensive business course library, Shopify is there to support your success every step of the way. What's incredible to me about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify is there to empower you with the confidence and control to revolutionize your business and take your business to the next level. Now it's your turn to get serious about selling and try Shopify today. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/HCI, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/HCI to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/HCI. Check out my new book, The Future Leader, Creating and Transforming Next-Gen Organizations. Stemming from 2 decades of professional experience and over 600 in-depth interviews with executives, thought leaders, and scholars from across the globe, The Future Leader will help you explore the ordinary, everyday actions that will help you to prepare to lead in the future of work, to respond to an uncertain future, and to produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Academy, courses, micro-credentials, and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. All HCI Academy courses, micro-credentials, and certificates are designed, developed, and delivered by award-winning and internationally renowned scholars, educators, thought leaders, executives, and practitioners. Our courses, micro-credentials, and certificates will help you make your mark on the future of work and make an immediate impact in your organizations. Check out the HCI Academy and our many course offerings and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. I completely agree. So on the one hand, there's been this move towards metrics and people analytics and building the business case around HR, the HR function and all of that, because it's the corporate speak, right? It's what people in other areas, that's the language that they understand. So I often talk about when I have these kind of conversations on the podcast or with other people or in my own consulting work, I have the conversation around, there's the business case for why we do things, and that's important to lay out to make sure it's clear to everybody. But there's also the human case, and we should also be very clear about the human case. And they usually go together, right? You usually, if you focus on the well-being of your people, and in this case, we're talking about DEI stuff, but any sort of well-being of your people, that's going to drive better bottom line outcomes for the organization. So the two go hand in hand. And I think in a lot of people's minds, a lot of executives who may not come from the HR kind of background or the people management background, they often see it as a dichotomy. Like you either focus on the bottom line or you work and focus on your people. And I think the research bears out that that's just not true. When you focus on your people, in the human case behind it, it'll also feed into the business case, and you'll help everyone succeed and win. And so I just think bringing the human component back into it is really, really important. And that's something we can't talk about enough, I think, especially in this day and age of data analytics and AI driven decision-making and some of those types of things.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have one of the CEOs that I get to work with. We were having a version of this conversation, and what was cool about starting to work with him and his organization is he already had so many beliefs and that aligned with what we're talking about. He wanted to create a human-centered environment. That wasn't what he called it, but that's what he was trying to create. And his one of his core leadership beliefs is that profit and revenue is an outcome of what he does to lead the people at the company. So he focuses his energy on creating an environment where the people that work there can excel. And I thought that was a really interesting pivot, because I think what we, in those meetings, in those various rooms and conference rooms and boardrooms, we look at spreadsheets. So there's numbers on so a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint deck, and we are making decisions about the outcomes. And that's important. I'm not saying ignore the numbers or don't leverage that information, because it's critical. I think what's maybe has been lost is the reality that every single number behind it is a person or a group of humans. And as you're making those decisions, how do you keep those humans in mind? So I think that's I hope we can do more of that. And I do think the pandemic has created room for this conversation to emerge in a way that it really wasn't. There wasn't, I don't think, as much space for it a few years ago. So in the silver linings, look at the pandemic. That's one of the silver linings for me, is that we get to have these conversations, and hopefully not only will it help the success of companies and businesses, but also that it'll make the world better for people. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, the pandemic really has pushed us that direction. The tight labor market has pushed people in that direction, to organizations in that direction. We just have to focus more on the well-being of our people, and kind of the emergence of empathy as a core leadership competency. That's something that certainly was talked about before, but it's been talked about more in the last couple of years than I remember it ever being talked about in the decades prior. So I think that's a win. We have to recognize that people are real people. They're human beings. They have stuff that happens outside of work. We can't just assume people are going to compartmentalize, the stuff that happens at home, and then, walk through the door and automatically shut all of that off. Like, that's just not the way we work. That's not the way our brains are. That's not the way our emotions work. That's not the way stress and anxiety works. It all blends together. And so we just need to have some compassion. We have to have some empathy. We need to recognize and meet people where they're at, support them the best we can. When we do those things, then, our people feel valued. They feel needed, wanted. They feel like they have the opportunity to contribute in meaningful ways, that they can be their authentic self in the workplace, so on and so forth. All of that human-centeredness, then again, leads to greater productivity, greater efficiency, greater creativity, greater innovation, all those things which lead to better profits, better customer retention, all of those things. So again, it all goes hand in hand. And I think the organizations that have leaned into that during the pandemic, they've become employers of choice. And as we have the Great Resignation, you see people leaving, going other places, looking at, for greener pastures elsewhere. They're flocking to those employers of choice. And the ones that haven't embraced it, and they kind of screwed over their people, or just were pretty callous towards them during the pandemic, they're losing all their good people. And now they're floundering, trying to figure out how they can survive.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important, and I encourage leaders and decision makers to, as you're making business decisions. So one thing I like to say is, I don't really care whether you get to this conversation because you think it's good for your bottom line, or it's good for people, or it's good for people. It's good for both. Wherever you're starting from, thanks for joining the conversation. Let's do some good work together. And so, for those leaders who didn't focus on the humanity part of this conversation over the last couple of years, and are really focused on the business impact and outcomes that the human-centered leadership conversation can emerge. That conversation from the pandemic that we're talking about here, we're talking about from a workplace context. The other side of it is, people have said, life's too short. Life's too short to be miserable in a place that I don't want to work or that doesn't treat me well. And there are choices, and I can move to a different place. I can, I can join the gig economy. So I think workers have a much expanded understanding and awareness that they have more of a choice than ever before in where they get to work and what that looks like. So if you want the best people, you have to create an environment where they want to be. And I think that's a new lens to think about it through. I think the other part of that I also think is important for leaders and decision makers to think about is the changing demographics of the world. By 2040, the United States population will be predominantly people of color. So whether you're looking at it from your employee base or from your customer or clientele base, the reality is the workplaces that we lead today have to change to engage the evolution of the demographics of our workforce. So if you're focused on the long-term success of your organization, get in the conversation.
Yeah. And so all of this feeds into diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've mentioned belonging as well. That's often included in the acronym. So as we think about DEI or DEIB, what are some, and you've already talked about some of the old paradigms that are perhaps harmful or hindering our development. What are some of those mindset shifts that need to happen as we move more towards that people first way, especially for people who are just kind of locked in and embedded in this old way of thinking? How do we disrupt that so they can start to embrace this new approach?
I'll share that I have I have a very specific perspective on how we can move this conversation forward. I was an HR professional for many years, and I was then a DEI professional, and now I combine those skills and experiences and understandings into the work that we do at Hummingbird. When I think about the way that DEI has been done, and this is a perception. This isn't necessarily, as with anything, you generalize something, doesn't mean it's true everywhere and every person and every organization. But generally, the work that and the approach to DEI over the years has made people feel bad, and it has felt accusatory and it has felt blameful, and so then people don't want to engage in that conversation. You're like, well, that didn't feel good. Why do I want to be part of that? So the way that and the other piece of it is that DEI focuses really focused on awareness and education. So like, you should learn about these other experiences. Well, it's not possible for us to learn about all the things and all the experiences for all the people that we work with and that are in the world around us. So the way that we at Hummingbird try to shift the paradigm, and we were talking about this a moment ago, and you were highlighting around the paradigms of inclusive leadership. So it is happening, the conversation happening. I think we need to be more clear about it. So our focus is on how do we develop the skills to be able to see each other as humans, to identify our shared humanity, to then use that shared humanity as a catalyst to say, okay, well, John, you and I have different lived experiences. Let's learn about what happened in your life. And I think if we can start from, we're in this together as humans, and we also have different experiences, that allows space to understand systemic oppression in a different way. So that's the real focus of the work that we do at Hummingbird. And I hope that that's what we're going to see more of, is how this work can help the people and organizations have conversations that are building bridges and allowing us to see each other, understand each other, and acknowledge the systems of oppression that impact others. And then when you have that opportunity to understand through a different lens, then you can also then take action and support the change that's in progress. So I hope that that's where we go from here, is we do more of that and look at the skills and the capabilities and build those muscles that are required for these sensitive conversations. One other thing I would just mention very quickly there is one of the other tenets of workshops that we do around that we typically facilitate conversations around DEI topics, but the focus is on the conversation, not the content. And one of the things we say is, we don't expect you all to agree with that content that you watched or listened to. The goal isn't to agree. The goal is to understand, and then to have the ability to engage with other humans in a respectful way. And we've seen that to be very powerful. So those are a couple things that I think are happening, and I'd like to see more of.
The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Yeah, and I like getting away from the guilt and shaming portion. And maybe that's coming from a place of privilege. We're both white dudes. I'm a straight cisgender white dude. So I get it. Like maybe that's easy for me to say, and in part because I've felt that. I felt awkward in those conversations, wanting to be an ally, wanting to do the best I can, not being quite sure when it was appropriate for me to even comment or how to comment. So that's hard on the one hand. If you create a safe place where people can have those conversations without feeling like publicly shamed for, being, racist or a bigot because they say something wrong, then that can help facilitate more conversations, which can help people, move along the path, right? So that they can get better at this. They can build those muscles. They can learn the skills of having these inclusive types of conversations and interacting in meaningful ways. And there are definitely people who are racist, who are bigots. There are definitely people, not just microaggressions, not just implicit bias, but people who are, really have issues that harm other people. That definitely happens. But I do believe that most people are good. Most people are trying to do right by others. And most people, even if they might say something the wrong way, when it comes to just working side by side someone, that they value them, they appreciate them, and they want to work well with them. And it doesn't matter that their skin color is different or they're a different gender or whatever, right? I do believe that, but it's hard to get to that place where we can be patient with each other, where we can be understanding of each other, where we can give people space to learn and grow. So that's like on the one hand. On the other side, I might come at this a bit differently if I was, say a member of the LGBT community, a Black woman of color, something like that, where I have, not embedded privilege, but I have systems of oppression that have been holding me down throughout my life. I might approach this and not even say what I just said. So I get that too. And that's part of the hard conversation, and part of why I think what you were saying is important, that we don't need to agree completely on this, but we do need to agree to hold space for people to express themselves, to be civil with each other, and to try to help each other move along the path. And if we can do that, I think we can get there. I really do. I am optimistic and I'm hopeful for, the human spirit. I think most people want to do right by others. Most people want to work in a place of harmony. Most people want to treat other people well, I believe.
Yeah. And I appreciate everything you've just shared. And I realized one of the things that I haven't done in this conversation is share anything about my identity. So for those of you listening, because you can't see me, of course, I am also a cisgender white guy, like John. I am gay, and I also am a person with a disability. I have 3 invisible disability identities that I live with, and those are stories that I tell in the spirit of just vulnerability and helping others know that they're not alone. But I think it's such an important point, John, around the fact that you and I are both cisgender white guys. And I get that sometimes there are people who are in highly marginalized communities. They're like, Brian, you're sort of living in a fantasy land if you think that's going to change things. And that's okay. Like I welcome those challenges. I think it's important that we have all voices in this conversation, and those people that are leaning into that emotion, whether it's anger or hurt or pain or whatever it is, and saying, I'm going to use my voice, and I'm going to name this, and I'm going to challenge you. I need those voices in my work as well. I think the hope that I have with the way that we approach this work at Hummingbird is if we can shift the conversation and develop the skills to really have those meaningful conversations, it allows for the people that were previously feeling like they were being blamed, to be able to move to a place of, now how can I hear this pain in a different way, and how can I be part of the solution? So that's I think really the goal, although I haven't said it that way before. So this conversation, as with any conversation, it's always helpful to continue to think about how are we trying to honor the realities of the impacts of systemic oppression, and how are we doing work that's driving change. So so thank you for saying all of that. I think it's and particularly one of the things that's important for I think those of us that are white and white cisgender and men as well, is to acknowledge our privilege in these conversations, because as much as I've learned, the reality is about the impact of oppression on others, I'm still a white guy, and I can't sort of undo all of my experiences and put them aside. So they do influence the way that I see the world.
Well, Brian, it has been a pleasure. I note the time. I love this conversation. We could go on and on and on, but I'm going to have to let you go here in just a minute. Before we wrap up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can connect with you, find out more about your work and your team, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Sure. If you'd like to connect with me, the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can just search for Brian McComak, which is McComak, which is a strange spelling for McComak, but just roll with it. And then Hummingbird Humanity, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So keep in touch with us. And we have one of our mission at Hummingbird is to amplify the voices of the unheard. So that is the core to everything that we do. So if you join our community, you'll receive content and updates from a variety of different voices. It's not centered around me, Brian McComak, although hopefully you've enjoyed hearing from me today. I think on the final word on this topic, what I hope we can all do is, as we continue to take steps forward to create diverse, equitable, and inclusive environments, organizational cultures where people feel like they belong, is that we really do lean into our humanity. And humanity is messy. It means that I make mistakes and I get things wrong. And it means that sometimes I get to celebrate and have joyous moments. And sometimes I'm dealing with a serious situation, but I need to have a moment of levity to be able to get through it. And I think I just encourage us all to embrace our humanity, because I believe that if we do that in small ways and big ways, it's going to make an impact on the people that work in our companies and on the success of our company. So embrace your humanity, be real, be human, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Brian and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page and And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out my new book, The Future Leader, Creating and Transforming Next-Gen Organizations. Stemming from 2 decades of professional experience and over 600 in-depth interviews with executives, thought leaders, and scholars from across the globe, The Future Leader will help you explore the ordinary, everyday actions that will help you to prepare to lead in the future of work, to respond to an uncertain future, and to produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Academy, courses, micro-credentials, and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. All HCI Academy courses, micro-credentials, and certificates are designed, developed, and delivered by award-winning and internationally renowned scholars, educators, thought leaders, executives, and practitioners. Our courses, micro-credentials, and certificates will help you make your mark on the future of work and make an immediate impact in your organizations. Check out the HCI Academy and our many course offerings and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.